what you got, what you want, what you need. Gonna be your savior. Everything's gonna crash and break, but I know, yeah I know. What you got, what you want, what you need. Gonna be your savior. Everything's gonna crash and break. Your savior. It's time to redefine your deophobic mind. Don't hesitate, no escape from secrets on the inside. There's nothing left to lose. There's nothing left to prove. Surrender your love, it's all you can do.
It's Dogma Debate with your host, Michael Regilio. For extra content and to join the conversation, please head over to dogmadebate.com and join our Patreon. And welcome to what promises to be another fantastic episode of Dogma Debate, because Kelly's back. Kelly, you guys might remember him. He was on about 6 months ago. We had a fantastic conversation. And this is what's so great about Dogma Debate is that I feel like these conversations we have, they are polite and they are friendly, and we make friends with people and they come back and they talk. And not only is Kelly back, who I feel like I've started a little friendship with, but Dallas Duff, who's been on the program a bunch of times, actually set this one up. So I debate Dallas over politics. I've debated Kelly over religion, but I was talking to Dallas, as I do from time to time. And he said that he thought Kelly might be a great guest to have come back and talk about end time prophecy. And I said, wow, let's do it. Let's make that happen, because the Dogma Debate community is one big family, and when we all like each other, there's no animosity here. Kelly, welcome back to the show. You are promoting something this time that you didn't mention last time, which is the Areopagus. Did I say that right?
Yeah, the Areopagus project. I did not pronounce it. There may be different ways of pronouncing that the way I do it.
Yeah.
But I'm online at YouTube. There's a Defend Your Faith study we do at my church. Me and a friend of mine who's an attorney, we kind of get across the people how to go about, defending the historic Christian faith. And that's on YouTube if anybody wants to watch that. And I'll have to send Dallas a thank you for recommending me. Absolutely. I haven't seen Dallas for a while. We separated there for a little while. I have to get back on with him.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And so yes. I'm going to spell that for everybody so they can find you. It is Areopagus, Areopagus Project. Defend your faith. Get on it, folks. I'm sure Kelly would love to see you on his YouTube page.
Absolutely. Thanks for the plug, Michael.
You bet. And speaking of plugs, we got one more up front, and that is former host of Dogma Debate and friend to everyone, David C. Smalley, is going to be in Denver on December 19th, and he'd like to see anybody from the Dogma Debate family as well come to the show. And you can get tickets for that at davidcsmalley.com. Okay, Kelly, let's dive into it. End time prophecy. So let's just define what we're talking about here. End time prophecy. This is mostly from the book of Revelations, right? That there's certain prophecies.
Revelation, but Matthew and Paul speak about it as well. I believe even John has a little bit about it, but basically it's the idea that following the rapture, which is, I'm sure, a project or subject we're going to get into, there's going to be a rapture of the church. That seems to be pretty evident in the book of Revelation. Christians are not going to go through this time of trouble that the old earth will go on through. But there's some difference of opinions on that. It's not a salvation issue, so the Bible can be, it can be, me personally, I think it's pretty obvious that it's an end times thing that we haven't got to yet. There are certain people I respect that disagree with me about that, but, of course, since they disagree with me, they have to be wrong. That was just a joke. But there are some different opinions on it. But as far as I look at it goes, it has not happened yet. Jesus left this earth after he was crucified, spent about 45 days showing everybody he was still alive, went to heaven. And when he went, the angels told him that why are you staring into heaven? You saw him leave and he will be back, but go about your business.
That is biblical, correct? That yes. Christ is returning. But let's be honest now. The rapture is not biblical. Is that actually talked about in the Bible? I was under the assumption that it was not.
It is. The verses are, I think, in 2 Thessalonians. I have to look that up. But the term rapture is actually a Latin term. You'll see it's called rapturus. We just shortened it a little bit.
Right.
But the original Greek was referred to as caught up.
Right.
You'll be caught up into the sky, and this is an event that's needless to say a miraculous event.
Oh yeah,
and it is talked about in Scripture. It
is. Okay, so let's be clear about what exactly it is that Christians believe the rapture is. It's not that Christians will die and all go to heaven at the end times, but you guys will actually bring your bodies with you. Am I correct in that? Because I've only seen a few of the Left Behind films for my personal reference, and it does in the film they portray it as just clothes left on the street, or airplanes flying and the pilot's uniform is suddenly sitting in the seat and the pilot's gone. So you believe that whole bodies will be raptured into heaven? Is that correct?
There's one outlook on it. I believe it's more of a spiritual thing. Now, the Left Behind series, it's a entertainment.
Right.
Also supposed to be in biblical, but
After this podcast, check out an audiobook on Libby. The Libby app has thousands of free audiobooks from your library. Get more stories about your favorite players and coaches on Libby, or get lost in a true crime case. All you need is a library card and the free Libby app. Yes, you heard right. The app is 100% free, and so are the audiobooks. Visit getlibby.com to step up your listening game with Libby today. That's GETLIBBY.com. Libby is an official sponsor of the Los Angeles Lakers.
It's the Kia Season of New Traditions sales event. So don't just hang your own lights. Venture out and look for the northern lights. Drink cocoa on the beach. Or be a drive-by karaoke caroler. Because every Kia comes with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. So you can take holidays to places they've never been. See your local Kia dealer or visit kia.com to learn more. Kia, movement that inspires.
See Kia dealer for warranty details. Event ends 1/2/25.
I think they left the clothes there as kind of a visual effect.
Right.
I'm not so sure exactly whether the bodies are going home or not, because it is a spiritual event.
Right.
The bodies may go. That could be. That's not real clear about that. They don't define it perfectly about that. There's probably some theologians that could give you some insight on that, but either way, either one or the other are our spirit, which is everything we understand and concern ourselves with, love, desires, everything else, is going to leave, and the body's going to be here dead. Or it could be that the body leaves completely. Now It's going to be transformed. I believe the second one is probably the most accurate. The body's going to leave. It's going to be transformed into a different body. It's not going to be old like this one is. Pointing at my face here, that's on screen, but
yeah,
it's not going to be that anymore. It's going to be a body like what Jesus got when he returned. He could walk through walls. There's probably no age system. We're not going to age. Entropy doesn't exist in the next dimension. So that's some differences on it. Yes.
Yeah. And so, okay. And what happens according to theologians, the Bible, according to Kelly, to us non-believers at that point? Is it 7 years of toil or something like that? Do I have that right?
I believe the first 3.5 are going to be actually pretty good. Because consider this, there's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 billion people that are going to leave. And all their stuff is going to be left behind. Okay,
just to be clear, so that just because I know the denominations in Christianity, I often hear one Christian say to another, "You're not a real Christian," or "You're doing it wrong," or "You're not saved because you're a Catholic," or "You're whatever." I mean, so you believe that anyone at all that is of the Christian denomination of any ilk is getting sucked right up to heaven
if they're born again. Now, you want to get into the cult thing? I can, but
I would love to in a moment. But I do want you to. I do want to keep just painting a picture of what it is you believe is going to happen.
Yes. Christians that have identified themselves as born again.
So
some of the Catholics may not use that particular term, but somebody that is has given their life to Jesus and believes that Jesus, like Romans 10:9 says, if you believe in your heart, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That's a present exact tense. So those people that believe that are going home.
Okay.
They're not going to be here anymore.
Gotcha. And then us non-believers, you say the first 3.5 years without Christians would be pretty good.
It may not be that
I
bad.
disagree. I love Christians. I enjoy hanging out with them. So I think it would be kind of sad not to have my Christian friends around. But you're saying that it won't be a time of toil, perhaps. Is that what you're getting at?
Not yet.
Right.
The last 3 is going to be a really bad time on earth.
Okay. So tell me about that.
Go home with me. You can come home with me. All you got to do is just accept.
Hey, that's what you're here for. Maybe you will talk me into it. Let's see how this episode goes. Perhaps at the end, I will have professed my faith.
Okay.
That said, though, but tell me about those last 3 years. Now I'm getting very curious what awaits for me, because the first 3.5, although I'll miss my Christian friends, you say it won't be so bad. There'll be plenty of, there'll be plenty of parking in LA, I imagine.
Yeah, there you go. The traffic is going to be reduced by a significant amount.
Yeah.
But not only that, but all of Christian stuff is going to be here.
Right.
Their houses, their cars, their boats, all this stuff is still going to be here.
Ooh, moral quandary. Is it wrong to take the stuff of a raptured Christian?
They're gone.
I mean, I wonder what the legal status there is.
My thought process, I don't know exactly how it's all going to be distributed.
Right.
But when you're left here, those people are going to want that stuff just to rot away.
Well, but so perhaps some of their relatives weren't raptured. I think they would have. Yeah, yes. They have the claim to that stuff. So,
and they're going to say, actually, I'm really glad that he left. He was kind of a bit of an annoyance.
So when the rapture comes, folks, before you just go taking stuff from raptured Christians' homes, let's make sure their relatives weren't raptured with them.
Yes,
so,
that's right.
And then, so it's just Christians leave, non-believers left behind. Yes. As the title of the movie goes. And you said 3.5 years?
Yeah, it's 3.5 years. They've got it counted down to the days, but it's 7 years total, 3.5 for both.
Oh, 3.5 for both. And then the second 3.5, why at that point does it turn into a less fun experience?
That is going to be an ugly, ugly state of affairs. So what triggers all this is this person that comes along that is, and they're going to be rebuilding the temple. If you read the book of Revelation, the temple is there.
And this is the second temple of Solomon?
Actually, the third, but the rebuild will be the third, but it was the second that was destroyed. Right.
And this is in Jerusalem. I'm just trying to, in case anyone is unfamiliar with the prophecy as it is. This has long been the prophecy, even for Christians, I think, that don't believe in the rapture so much. They do believe in the returning of Christ, that this is one of the conditions, is that the temple will be rebuilt. Big problem. There's a mosque sitting there right now.
Yes. Yeah. And the guy that is able to bring this all about, can you imagine the notoriety he's going to get?
Is this a good person or a bad person? Are we talking about like the Antichrist, or this is a good person that will bring this all about?
No, the Antichrist will be the one that does it.
I see.
He's going to be a figure. A lot of people think he's going to be this evil figure. He's not. Right. He's going to be a very I hate to use this idea, but he's going to be very charismatic.
Right. I've heard that.
Because I'm not trying to say that he is, but it's going to be somebody like Trump.
I was holding off, Kelly. I was thinking Trump. I'm not a religious person, but if there is an Antichrist, it's probably Trump.
Okay, all right. I figured I was going to get that, but what I mean by that is he's charismatic. People like him.
Right.
Maybe I should use Reagan instead, because most people liked him. He's going to be very charismatic. He's going to be able to get people's attention. I mean, can you imagine somebody that's going to be able to negotiate the Jewish people and the Islamic people into agreeing on that site? Right now, Jewish people can't even go up there. They're not even allowed on the Temple Mount. They won't let them in.
Wow.
And if I go up there as a Christian, I have to cover up my cross, any type of religious connotations whatsoever. I have to cover them. I can't bring my Bible. Mm-hmm. This is a place of spiritual attack, and the person that's able to get this done is going to be able to negotiate like nobody else has ever been able to do.
Okay, so we have a charismatic character that. Would you say this person is going to? This is the Antichrist, so this is not a good person, in your opinion.
Right. And he's going to be a political character.
A political character.
Yes.
And okay, so he gets the Islamic world to I'm not even sure what would to replace the mosque that's there, or convert the mosque into a temple, or maybe turn it into a shared space, like one of those offices that turns into a yoga studio after 5 o'clock.
There you go, yoga. I think if you go onto the Temple Mount, I don't know whether you've been to Israel, Michael, or not, but
I would love to go to Israel, just for the record. That is at the top of my bucket list. I am a huge fan of history. I've been to many ancient places, walked among ruins, and there's just no better place than Israel. It's at the top of my list. I would love to walk those ancient streets, touch those ancient walls, and connect with history, but I have not. I've
been there 8 times, and the Temple Mount, there where the Dome of the Rock is, there's a space that's on the side of it. I can't say east or west, but to the side of the Dome of the Rock, there's a large vacant area there. And many people think that's actually where the temple was.
Huh.
So there's plenty of room to put a temple back up again without destroying the Dome of the Rock. And that way, if you had to destroy the Dome of the Rock, I don't see how this guy could do it. But it's going to be both of them there, because it does talk about, I believe it's in Corinthians, that there's going to be Gentiles that are next door. And there's always been a place, even when the temple was back during the Old Testament, there was always a place for the Gentiles to gather, that they could actually hear the message. They can't go into the Temple Mount, but they could be in a place that's next to it. And that's basically what they're talking about doing, what you can observe once you go there. There's a spot for that. So I believe the guy's going to be able to negotiate that out so that the temple and the Dome of the Rock are going to be next to each other.
But
that's an accomplishment.
This strikes me as slightly strange off the top, because it would seem to me that everyone would be aware of the fact that you are rebuilding this temple in order to bring on the end of the world. I would think that maybe non-Christians in particular would be like, hey, we're not so into ending the world. Maybe hold off on rebuilding this temple. I mean, that is you're going to need a deal maker.
Oh,
possibly even better than Trump. I don't know. He claims to be the best deal maker ever. That seems like a tough deal and so at the end of this deal, you all toil for 3.5 years, which I still want to get into.
But remember, the Christians are gone. They're not here anymore.
So the temple gets rebuilt after the rapture?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
So why in the world would people do it after the Christians are gone?
The Jews want it. The Jews want their temple back, and there's when you get to go to Israel, there's the Temple Mount Society. It's right near where the Western Wall is. They've got all the implements ready to go. They got everything ready. They've got the sacrifice. They've even done some sacrifices. The Jewish government's not too happy about that, but they've done it.
Tell me about that real quick, because that strikes me as a little weird. Are you talking animal sacrifice? What do you mean by sacrifice?
Animal sacrifices.
Animal sacrifices in the 21st century are still happening.
They have done it. They don't get away with it very often, but they've tried it. They've gotten the tribe of Cohen, which is the tribe for the priests, the Levites, and they're the ones that do the sacrifices, and they've practiced their art.
After this podcast, check out an audiobook on Libby. The Libby app has thousands of free audiobooks from your library. Get more stories about your favorite players and coaches on Libby, or get lost in a true crime case. All you need is a library card and the free Libby app. Yes, you heard right. The app is 100% free, and so are the audiobooks. Visit getlibby.com to step up your listening game with Libby today. That's GETLIBBY.com. Libby is an official sponsor of the Los Angeles Lakers.
Alter Ego 2025, presented by Capital One, is sponsored by your local Kia dealers. Don't miss your chance to see Incubus, The Offspring, Cage the Elephant, The Lumineers, Glass Animals, St. Vincent, The Head and the Heart, Fontaine's DC, and Måneskin's Damiano David. Visit any participating local Kia dealer for your chance to win your way in with VIP tickets and parking. Make the most of your season during the Kia Season of New Traditions sales event. Gift yourself some savings and visit your local Kia dealer today.
They've got it down, and they've got all the implements. They're all there. You can go and visit the place. All the implements are all ready to go.
That is blowing my mind, man. I have so many questions, and I just want to interject quickly, because my only real understanding of the tribe of Cohen, the Cohens. I saw a picture one time of a rabbi. Have you seen this, Kelly? A picture of a rabbi wrapped in a plastic bag on an airplane.
Yes.
You've seen that picture.
I don't remember why it was done, but
it was because he's a Cohen and because he believed they were flying over cemeteries. This is what I read. And they're not allowed to pass cemeteries or even fly 30,000 feet over them.
Yeah.
So we're talking about pretty extremely religious people.
Pretty extreme, yes. And depending on how legalistic you get, you can get pretty extreme.
Yeah. Well, animal sacrifice is pretty extreme. Now, as a non-believer, it all sounds a bit silly to me. But as a Christian, I believe that the New Testament makes it clear that animal sacrifices are no longer needed, right?
No longer done. No, they're not.
So would you say that they're trying to cash a coupon that expired with God, and he's like, "Hey, I'm not taking those anymore." Is that? I mean, how does one explain the animal sacrifices?
That was a pretty good explanation there, Michael. I'm proud of you not taking that option anymore. That's basically it. That entire sacrificial process was a picture of Messiah coming. And once Messiah came, they only did that for about another 30, 35 years or so. Once he came on the scene, declared himself to be God, rose again from the dead, came back on Pentecost, all these things had happened. Okay. After that, there was only about 35 more years until the temple was destroyed by Titus. Came in, destroyed the temple, knocked all the bricks down, and the temple is no longer there. It's gone. The Jews have no place to do their sacrifices anymore. And at that point, Judaism was in quandary because Moses said the only way to qualify or for you to do away with your sin is from sacrifice. Blood has to be sacrificed, and they could no longer do it. It has to be on the Temple Mount. So they can no longer do that. And at that point, the ideals of Christianity, eliminated the sacrificial process. The sacrificial process was for the lamb, just like in the book of Exodus, where it first started, the Passover celebration. The lamb was the one that was slaughtered, and it was put on the doorposts at the top in the shape of a cross. That's what ended the sacrificial process was Titus coming and destroying the temple. Once that happened, now the sacrificial process is done. Even if they wanted to try to sacrifice a goat, they're not doing it in the right place. So there's no point in it, especially if you have someone that's following the law as they're supposed to follow it. There's only one way to go about this. And God took it away from them.
This is all, it's getting very, very curious to me. So,
because it is an interesting topic you picked.
Right. And it's leaving me with so many questions that I'm trying to pick them carefully so that we just don't go out down 1,000 rabbit trails. I'm sure anyone listening would know. As an atheist, I'm dying to know how sacrificing an animal or even sacrificing a human being does anything for an almighty God. But that said, I'm going to let that go. And
humans were never a sacrificial point for God. He doesn't want to do that. But anyway, yeah.
Okay. So the Christians are gone.
Yes.
There's a charismatic leader. I mean, it seems to me the world would be in chaos if 2 billion people just disappeared. And if I'm not mistaken, according to what other Christians I've talked to, would a non-believer then be given the option of accepting Jesus as their savior and saving their soul once the rapture happens? Or is that too late? Once the rapture happens, you missed it, you blew it, it's too late, you're going to hell. What's the deal there?
Well, the rapture is really the entire tribulation process, starting with the rapture. The tribulation process is really a process of bringing the Jews back to God, showing them the demonstrations. If you look in the book of Zechariah, it talks about the fact that the Jewish people will see the one who they crucified in the sky. But the tribulation process is mainly for the Jewish people. If you look at the book, there's 12,000 of each tribe, Jewish witnesses, 144,000. That's where the Jehovah's Witnesses get it from. But those are all Jews, and they're witnessing to the Jewish people about Jesus and the fact that he was coming Messiah, and now he's came back. And all these Christians that you were a little doubtful about in their book, they're all gone now. Why are they gone and you're still here?
Right.
That's what the Jewish witnesses are going to be talking to them about. Now, can non-Jewish people be saved? Yes, I believe they can. I think the Holy Spirit's still going to be around. There's still going to be people say, you know, that idiot Kelly that used to talk about this dumb rapture thing, when it actually happens, they're going to say, oh my gosh, he was finally right about something. Same thing they said about Noah when the rain started falling. You know, they made fun of him because he was building this boat. It never rained before. And he's talking about this flood thing. And said, well, you're crazy, man. And when it all happened, they stood outside the boat and said, oh my gosh, that ding-a-ling was right.
Well,
anyway, yes, it's suddenly
from my point of view, Kelly, I have to say that's not the best analogy to use, because the analogy was a thing that never happened, a made-up story, a fairy tale. And I don't want to get into the flood thing just yet, and I'm happy to if you want to give me your evidence.
I'm just going by what the Bible says.
Right. Okay. So the Bible says that people will. It seems so. The Jewish people. I mean, it seems to me that anybody, if 2 billion people either died in an instant or their whole bodies were vacuumed up into heaven,
and only the Christians.
Just right, 2 billion, but that's the number you gave me at the top of the conversation, and I'm assuming that's roughly the population of Christians in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah,
right. So it seemed to me that, I mean, see, as somebody who goes from an evidence-based, worldview, that'd be a mark on the side for Christians. I mean, even I would have to think about it. So it seems to me that everybody would convert to Christianity.
At that point, you would just have to think about it. All the Christians disappeared, and you're aware of it. Now, there's going to be people that say,
it would be a think about it.
They'd have to learn. But, I mean, you're aware of it.
Well, for me, it would be a think about it, because my first question would be, what else could it be? Is there another? Before we close on the Christians were right, let's talk about, I don't know, what else could it be? I would ask a scientist or a doctor or depending on the situation. But it just
invasion,
what's that?
An alien invasion, but they only took the Christians.
Again, when it happens, I'm sure we can formulate some theories. Off the top of my head, I can't off the top of my head think of too many reasons 2 billion people would disappear in an instant off the earth. So again, like I said, that'd be a point over on your side. Just as a atheist, former Christian, and somebody who's read a bit of the Bible. I've read it, the whole thing, at one point in my life, but I'm not a biblical scholar. But this is not now, Kelly, I'm going to say something. This is not a God I would worship. He seems like a rather childish, evil, maniacal monster to me in many ways, and we'll get into that in a moment. I'm just trying to paint a clear picture for exactly what we were talking about here when we say the rapture. So Christians gone, Jews converting, perhaps non-Jews. I mean, a Muslim, are they welcome into the kingdom of heaven at this point? Anybody.
Yes. Anybody.
But you gave a number about how many people would be. 140,000, did you say?
That's the witnesses, 144,000. That's, I believe it's if I'm not mistaken, it's in Revelation chapter 6. But
what do you mean witness? They're just going to witness. What is it they're going to witness?
They're going to witness of Messiah has come.
Okay, so they're going to actually lay eyes on Jesus in the sky.
Yes. These Christians, the 144,000 witnesses are going to be what they call Messianic Jews, and they're going to state that Jesus was in fact Messiah. Okay. And these are ones that are going to go and witness to the rest of the Jewish people and probably the rest of the world. There's several different events. If you wanted to get into what's going to go on in the second half,
I absolutely would. I'm almost there with completing the picture in my head. And I'm just very curious. You said that Jesus is going to appear in the sky. Did you say that?
That's in Zechariah chapter 12.
Zechariah chapter 12. So that this has nothing to do with you, Kelly, but a million arguments I've had with Christians before when I say, when I refer to, a wizard in the sky or something like that. They say heaven or God is everywhere. The sky thing, you're being childish, you're making fun of us. But there is biblical reason to think that God is up in the sky because it says Jesus is coming from the sky.
From another dimension.
Another dimension.
About that before. It's a higher dimension than what we are. Our dimension started to exist. This is back to the old one, but just real briefly.
Yeah.
Our dimension started to exist. time, space, matter, and energy all became, and even Hawking and Penrose said that time, space, matter, and energy began to exist.
Yeah.
That's what the dimension is now. Our dimension is that we're trapped inside this, but the dimension that was above it, if it did start to exist, and that's the cosmology right now, is believe it do start to exist. Things begin to exist have to have a cause, and that's, I believe, where God exists, is in that higher dimension. Now, I have to about miracles. We talked about a little bit about that last time.
Right.
Somebody that created everything is going to have control over it.
One would think. That said, though, but the thing that struck me when you said that, though, is the idea of dimensions and multiple dimensions. That is something that it currently is sci-fi. If it's not science, it's
string theory believes
that is not proven.
String theory is not proven.
No, it's a hypothesis. But so it's very interesting to me that the people who wrote the Bible, the people who studied the Bible, people who read the Bible for 2,000 years, this was not their understanding. And then science comes along and says, maybe there's other dimensions, string theory, etc. And Christians go, aha, that's where God is. He's in another dimension. But nobody ever mentioned God being in another dimension until 50 years ago, 100 years ago?
If you consider Genesis 1, it's basically what it says. Now, did they have the idea in calling it dimensions? But I believe if you read some of Paul's letters, he goes into the fact that our existence, there's a higher existence. As a matter of fact, he was taken there. Most biblical scholars believe that Paul died, he went to heaven, and he came back, because he talks about it. He says, I went to a place that I can't describe. It's not lawful for me to try to describe it. So that's now did they have everything that we have now? Of course not. They don't have the technology that we have now. They don't have the telescopes and things. But God described things that way. He described the fact that the universe is expanding 1,000 years before we knew it. This is all getting back to last time. So
that's getting back to last time. And we've actually debated that with another Christian recently, the expanding universe in the Bible, which I don't think it's in there. But that said, so I think I have a pretty clear picture of the rapture now. And my first question is one that I ask all the time of Christians, which is, why is it the people that witnessed Jesus and his miracles were given absolute definitive proof of his divinity and they get to go to heaven, and that I'm stuck here trying to figure it out reading a 2,000-year-old book that doesn't make a lot of sense. It was written in a different language. It's been interpreted 1,000 times and all these things. And if I don't decide that he's the real deal, I go to hell. But now what we're seeing is that the entire world then gets to witness that Jesus is real. He comes up in this, we see him in the sky. 2 billion Christians are raptured. And then we get a chance, if you're still alive at that time, to say, I accept Jesus, and you get into heaven. It seems very cruel and not particularly fair to all the people that for 2,000 years before this, or maybe longer, who knows when the rapture's coming, that didn't accept Jesus because they didn't have proper proof. They certainly didn't have definitive proof, like 2 billion Christians disappearing overnight and Jesus appearing in the sky, and they have to toil in hell forever. Right off the bat, that seems like an incredibly immoral God, which is, this is the way us atheists tend to see things.
Well, it's free will, Michael. It's a free will thing. When I first came to faith, and I was 43 years old, and a 5-year-old was who told me about it. Can I believe everything a 5-year-old tells me about? I love my 5-year-old very much. It's my daughter. But when she was telling me about this, when it came to the point with me reading the Bible, I said, well, this is all nice. I would like to believe it. But I had some of the same concerns you did. I said, there's some pretty strange stuff going on here. So right. I decided, I asked God, okay, I'm good with this. But can you please reveal to me the fact that these things actually happened? And I had an open mind for it, completely.
Right.
And as I read, it became very obvious to me that that the most reasonable explanation is that God exists. That's the most reasonable explanation for what we see for life and the incredible complexity that life is, the coded instructions that create life. Those are all things that even NASA comes to the point and says that coded information only comes from intelligent sources. That's the SETI program. We talked about that last time.
Right.
So in my opinion, God has made himself very evident, and I believe it says so in Romans chapter 1.
Hiking is great, but having to carry all that heavy equipment can really wear you out. That's why Z-Packs offers premium, ultra-light backpacking gear designed to let you do more. With lightweight tents and sleeping bags starting at under £1 and fully framed backpacks at £1.50, Z-Packs award-winning designs let you lighten your load and enhance your outdoor performance. So level up your adventures today at zpacks.com. That's zpacks.com.
At Chalk, defending childhood is at the heart of everything we do. From routine visits to specialty care, our services are available when families need them, because nothing should put childhood on pause. Discover more at choc.org.
It says that
Sure, it does say so in Romans chapter 1, but let's be honest here, Kelly. The difference between you looking at DNA, which obviously, again, if that was something that helped convince you, then how unfortunate for the person that was born and died pre the scientific knowledge of DNA that didn't have that evidence, and they're burning in hell because they didn't happen to be born in an age when they could look at DNA, which you consider to be a convincing argument. And none of this comes even close to the evidence that will be given to the people that are alive on earth at the time of the rapture, which is 2 billion people get vacuumed into heaven and Jesus appears in the sky. It seems like they get a free pass to heaven.
Well, I'll agree with you that after the first century, when Jesus was, reappearing to people dead, 500 at a time, since then, I agree with you that the proof of 2,000 Christians being gone, I'll grant you that that's more proof than what you get other than the first century. But if you really want to understand and whether you want to believe it, it takes investigation. And once you do the investigation of the historical nature of the Christian faith and all the things that happened in the first part of the Bible as well, the documentation and the archaeology is there. I've reviewed it, I've seen it, and it's pretty convincing. Now,
we've gotten into that, and we can get into it again. Route? But again,
let me just make this point.
Please.
Does everybody have to go down that route like I did? No, I'm a doubting Thomas. That's me. That's the guy that I recognize in the Bible. That's like me. He didn't believe anything until he actually put his hands on it. And that's me. But I did put my hands on it. I put through it. I've had events happen in my life that have no explanation other than that. But those events all took place after I said, okay, I believe. And God strengthened my belief. I can tell you stories about it, but let's just keep on topic.
Yeah. And perhaps we'll get into those stories. But again, right. Kelly,
that event is more evidence than what, say, the people in the 20s and 30s in the U.S. had. But that doesn't mean they didn't have enough.
But it seems to me you're saying that if you investigate, if you look into and you study molecular biology and astrology and quantum physics, and
that in particular,
the evidence might be there, but the laziest, least curious person on earth, after 2 billion people disappear and Jesus shows up in the sky, he's going to be convinced. He doesn't have to put anything into it. He or she is convinced. Again, seems incredibly unfair to the person toiling in hell for an eternity who was given none of these advantages. He didn't live in the time of Jesus when Jesus was around, appeared to the apostles, performed miracles. Side note, I don't think any of those things happened. Or certainly not even close to the amount of evidence that the person that witnesses the rapture and Jesus in the sky gets. That seems like a capricious God to me that would burn that nice person, maybe a very nice person who dedicated, let's say a very nice Muslim person 150 years ago, dedicated their life to the Quran and to the good deeds and the charity that are instructed in the Quran, dies, goes to hell, burns forever, and then some lazy TikToker gets to witness the rapture and Jesus in the sky, and off to heaven forever he goes. That's a loving God?
It's a loving God because he's taking the ones that want to go. I don't see a route like we talked to last time. The subject was, I don't see why atheists are where they are because I don't think they have any evidence for it.
Right.
But that being said, there's always been the convening of Jesus into someone's life, if that's what they want. You're, in my opinion, Michael, you're creating a God that's very small and very incapable of delivering his message. I worship a very big God. I believe he can do whatever he needs to do for someone who wants to know him. There will be somebody to know him. Let me give you an example of an event that happened that's described by a certain pastor. There was a lady that was studying at college in England, and she was wondering what it is God wanted her to do. And she kept having this dream of scaling this mountain, and there's this huge guy standing in front of her with his back turned to her, and he's praying to God. He's with his hand up in the air, trying to get God to talk to him. So finally she said, okay, where do you want me to go? She didn't know where this was. So she went to Borneo, went up into the mountains, tried to get somebody to go with her, said nobody was going to go with her because those people are cannibals, are going to kill you. She went up the hill, and at the top of the hill, she ran into the same dream that she's always had. Now, I can't prove any of that. None of it's on film, but those type of aspects are all over the place. And right now,
wait, hold on. Just to be clear, that's a story a woman in England tells, and she's alive today telling that story.
I believe that happened a while ago. She might not be alive, but it's documented.
It's documented that she said that. Obviously, there's also people that claim they were abducted by aliens, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, without documentation, that it's just.
When you look into that there a lot of them are pagan. They get that happen. But again, you don't have any proof for that. I don't believe in aliens because we've never seen one.
Have you ever seen a god?
We should have had some detection of them by now, because they've been listening for the last 50 or 60 years. They've heard nothing. There should be all this traffic going on if there actually is aliens.
This is a super side road, but I will defend my alien brothers and sisters out there that it's actually since the first, I guess it would be the first satellite transmission, I think, that really sent radio waves out of the Earth's sphere.
Television in the 50s was sending that type of signal.
Right. So we're talking more like 70 years. And I will tell you, Kelly, that I would say 99.9999999% of the planets in this universe are further than 70 light years away.
Sure,
and even if they're only 36 and a half light years away, for them to get a signal and send one back would be over 70 years. So I don't know that I agree with the alien thing just yet.
Well, okay, let's not get on that too far. But
yeah,
I'm saying that the other civilizations that have always existed, supposedly for millions of years, have been sending out these signals. We don't hear any of them. I don't want to argue whether it's aliens or not. That's not our topic.
Yeah.
That's okay.
But it's always fun to talk aliens.
The aliens. How do we get onto the aliens, Michael?
To be honest with you, I'm not really sure. I was talking about the capricious God that would damn someone to hell.
And I was telling you the story about this lady that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, right, the alien invasion. So again, that story, although perhaps poetic, is unfortunately has to go into the category of just a story.
It could have happened, and she says that it happened. Now, at this point, right now, you can check this with Muslims. A lot of them are having Jesus show up to teach them about in their dreams, but in person as well. That's where Islam is getting their knowledge of the New Testament. And right now, at this point, Iran is the fastest growing Christian community in the world. And it's mainly women. Women are seeing that Jesus has a different plan for them than what Islam has, and they're flocking, and that Christian community is growing in Iran.
Well,
so Jesus is able to penetrate wherever he wants to penetrate. God is not small. God is not incapable.
That's not exactly evidence.
Somebody wants to know, God will make it so they can be known. That was where our conversation got to when I talked about the lady going up the mountain.
Okay. And I hear you. And I'm just curious because obviously you said something about Iran. I'm not entirely sure it's true. And I would like to retort. I'm just going to, but off the top of my head, I will say that if you lived in a misogynistic society that didn't treat women as equals, as some Islamic countries certainly do. Obviously, Saudi Arabia comes to mind. There are others. And then there's another culture that exists that America is a very Christian country, and we treat, not perfectly, but we treat women better than that. Yes, Christianity is reportedly growing in Iran, particularly among underground house churches and converts from Islam. Despite being an Islamic republic where converting from Islam to Christianity is officially prohibited, I mean,
so I'm just saying that God can make his message known.
And I hear what you're saying. I don't know that that's evidence of anything other than curious people searching for a better way. I mean,
your point was about Jesus appearing, and the rapture happening. There's always been his message getting across. That's always been there. It's not
like
something
that.
Well,
I'm going to leave it at that. Not like that. God seems very capricious in that way, where some people get total evidence. They get a free ticket to heaven. I don't know these people.
It's not free.
At Chalk, defending childhood is at the heart of everything we do. From routine visits to specialty care, our services are available when families need them, because nothing should put childhood on pause. Discover more at choc.org.
Every kickoff, every 777, every pocket ace. Bovada.lv gets you ready for every way you want to play. Hourly jackpots, anonymous poker events, boosted sports odds. Join today and get up to $750 in bonuses. See for yourself why players have chosen us as their online casino for over 10 years. Your best bet every day you want to play. Bovada.lv. Ready for everything.
It's not free. They had to believe beforehand.
Right, but they got definitive proof, and then more definitive proof is coming. The laziest, most slovenly person on earth is going to get definitive proof. He or she will get to go to heaven, and the good person that died 100 years ago that didn't accept Jesus is burning in hell forever. Seems awfully.
God's not going to force anybody into heaven. If you don't believe, he's not going to make you go there.
Right, but why is he giving some people such definitive proof? This is my point.
He gives everybody definitive proof.
Not like that. Not Jesus in the sky level proof. Jesus in the sky level proof. That's A+. That's the Glengarry level proof.
That's visual proof. There's mental proof too. You can come to that conclusion without it. Okay. And the evidence is all there. If you consider what went on in the first century, this guy that never led an army, never held political office, never traveled a couple hundred miles from his home, never attended any major seminary, and humiliatingly died on a cross. And he's the most written about individual in history.
Yeah.
Why? Those guys went out and claimed what they saw, and they were willing to die for it when they couldn't communicate with each other. Thomas in India, Mark in Egypt, Peter and Paul in Rome. They all died without communicating, and they didn't know whether these people were going to made up this supposed made up story, but they died instead. And that's what has propelled Christianity all along. It's not about being able to see things in the sky. It's about seeing what's around you and realizing that these people were willing to die for their beliefs.
Plenty of people are willing to die for their beliefs.
For what they thought happened. They died for what they witnessed happened. I'll grant you the guys in San Diego,
I really want to get into the second 3.5 years of the rapture and hear about the toil, but I have to make this point to what you just said, which is, the entire suicide bomber community was willing to die for their beliefs, and that they were almost exclusively Muslims. Right?
They didn't witness them. They were told about them. They didn't witness them.
Didn't witness what? Oh, you're talking about well, again, we don't know that any of that's true. There's no documentation that any of that is actually true. The Bible can't prove the Bible. You need extraneous.
It's better documentation than Aristotle and Socrates and Alexander the Great.
Well, I don't think Aristotle, but Socrates never wrote anything down. That's true, but it doesn't matter if Socrates
lived or not.
What's
that?
There's
better documentation for the New Testament than there is for those characters.
Right.
The things that were written about them were much
the
later.
stakes aren't the same, Kelly. Whether or not Socrates said these things, it makes no difference to me. They're wise things, some of them, not everything Socrates said, but Socrates I like, Aristotle not so much. But it doesn't matter. What he said, it's true no matter what. And I don't have to believe in fantastical things to believe that the wisdom expounded by Socrates is worth paying attention to. The stakes are not the same at all. Whether or not Socrates lived makes no difference. Whether or not Jesus lived, wow, does that make a difference to a lot of people's lives.
And you would agree on that 100%, Michael.
Yeah.
I'm glad you came to that point. I agree.
Yeah. So to compare the documentation around Jesus to the documentation around Socrates is to ignore the fact that the stakes are so very different. Okay, so that said, we've had that little moment, and now let's get to the 3.5 years of toil. What are we told about that?
It's going to be until now. There's been certain portions of the enemy, Satan's army, that is chained up.
Okay, these are terms I'm not fully familiar with. Who is Satan? Are these literal people on Earth right now that are Satan's army?
No.
Oh, okay. Demons. So we're talking about demons or something.
Fallen angels. You probably read about those. They're
sure.
Yeah. Satan took a third of the angels with him. Some of those are chained up because they are so bad that God figures, okay, I'm not going to make you deal with them. But they're going to be released. If you read
God's going to release these fallen angels?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. He's going to release them. Because remember something, God has been patient trying to gather people into the kingdom for 2,000 years, really longer than that, because the prophecies of Messiah were in place before that too.
Well, all he had to do was put Jesus in the sky once a year and everyone would be a Christian, but apparently he's only going to do it once.
I don't know about that. God did all these miracles that he did right in front of the Pharisees, and half of them didn't believe.
Well, so that's because the Pharisees also had magical powers, did they not? Back then, people had. Yeah, there was like a magic off.
They weren't walking on water. They weren't bringing people back from the dead.
But they were. One of them turned a staff into a snake, and
that was a trick. The snake was inside the staff. That's just a trick.
Oh, it's just a trick. I see.
So, I mean, the message has always been there, and has always been gathering people together. Now,
at Chalk, defending childhood is at the heart of everything we do. From routine visits to specialty care, our services are available when families need them, because nothing should put childhood on pause. Discover more at choc.org.
Behind every BP fill-up, thousands of people across America go to work every day. People producing energy offshore. People turning it into products at our refineries. People doing R&D to make products that are better for your engine. People trading and shipping fuels to their destinations. And the people who help you at one of BP's growing family of retail stations. They're part of the more than 300,000 jobs BP supports across the country. Learn more at bp.com/investing in America.
At this point, the common reference to this is that there's a passage that says, until the time of the Gentiles is complete. There's a passage. I can't give you the quote, but I know it's there. I can look it up.
And just to be clear, and I think I know it, Gentiles simply means non-Jewish person, right? In biblical text?
Yeah. And the time of the Gentiles is now. The time of the Jews was before Christ, and the time of the Gentiles is now. Paul brought the message, and the rest of them brought the message to the Jews as well. But when they didn't want to hear it, he went to the Gentiles. So it's referred to as the time of the Gentiles right now. And that time is going to be completed. The common idea is that there's this last person that's going to accept Christ, and that's the last one. At that point, the rapture happens. God takes home the people that he always knew was going to accept him, and now it's the ones that didn't. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to show you proof now. I told you about this story. People have told you about the story, and if they didn't tell you about it, you're going to look it up, because now you want to know what the heck happened to these 2 billion Christians. Why is it they're just gone? There's going to be a lot of people looking into that, and a lot of people are going to come to faith. But this is something that I wanted to talk about before. You're talking about being lazy and easy. That is not going to be the case for the Christians that are going to come to faith after the rapture. Most of them are going to be beheaded for their faith.
Who's going to behead them?
The Antichrist. The Antichrist is going to be the worst enemy of Christians there's ever been. And there's been lots of them. He's
both going to help rebuild the temple for the Jews and behead.
That's just power. He wants power. And he's going to come to the temple, and he's going to declare himself to be God. And that's when the Jews are going to turn their back on him. So
I'm
hold
just
on,
being
bro.
a little bit
I don't
snarky, but
see
sounds
Yahweh
very
on your-
Trumpy. Sounds very Trumpy to me. Go ahead.
But that's going to be the case. He's going to declare himself to be God in the temple. There's this guy in history that's around the time of the Maccabees. His name is the illustrious one in English, but anyway, I can't think of his name right this minute. It'll come to me. He was another type of the Antichrist. But the Antichrist is going to declare himself to be God at the temple, and Jews are going to turn their back on him. Say, hold on a second. I don't see any moniker on you that says Yahweh anywhere. You're not God. And and the Christians are going to do the same. The ones that have believed, they're going to do the same. You're not the guy. And at that point, things are going to get really, really bad. It talks
Just
about...
to clarify one real
about-
quickly, Kelly, did you say that the illustrious one was a form of Antichrist that's already been on Earth?
Yeah, the Antichrist has always been here. His version, let me rephrase that. Hold on, let me rephrase that.
Okay.
Satan's version of the Antichrist has always been here because Satan has no idea what's going to happen. He doesn't know. He's always had that ready. And trying to think the guy's name. It's one of the 4 kings that took over the Greek Empire. Antiochus Epiphanes is his name.
Okay.
It's called in Greek. It's the illustrious one. Real humble guy.
Gotcha.
And he was a version, picture of the Antichrist. And Naaman in the Bible that tried to kill the Jews in the time of Mordecai, he was another one that was a picture of the Antichrist. There's lots of them. And the Jewish people have always had that problem. There's always been somebody trying to wipe them out. And Satan knows this whole thing about the Messiah is going to come. He's well aware of that. And he's trying to stop it. Hitler tried to stop it too. He was trying to wipe out all the Jews. There's always been that case.
You think
but now,
Hitler was trying to stop the rapture from happening?
No, he was just killing off Jews. I shouldn't have probably got into that, but his thing was about the Aryan race.
Right, yeah.
And the fact that it's going to be polluted because of Darwin's ideas. But anyway, that was his thing. And
blaming the Holocaust on evolution. We'll let it, you get a pass on that one because I'm so interested in where you're going with this about these previous Antichrists.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, the Antichrist has always been around, but now this is the real guy. He's going to be able to, like I said, he's going to be a negotiator beyond anybody else that's ever been. He's going to be able to get the Jews and the Arabs to come together. Think about that for a minute. How good are you going to have to be to get those two people like each other again? That's going to be a task, but he's going to do it.
Sounds like a big task.
He's going to rebuild the temple on the Temple Mount. Mm-hmm. They're going to start their sacrifices again. And at that point, now God's going to show them, okay, guys, I showed you this already. And the 144,000 witnesses are going to go out and tell them about it. And this is the time of the Jews. This is the time when God is going to try to gather his people back to himself, just like he said he was going to. But there's going to be some Gentiles be saved as well. But you keep mentioning the second part of the tribulation.
Right.
If you read the second part of the tribulation, there's going to be these demons in the skies, and they're going to be killing people. Well, actually, there's some people are going to wish to die. They've been stung so badly and hurt so much that they want to die, but they can't. And there's going to be persecutions. There's going to be wars. There's going to be all this stuff going on. And there's going to be 2 witnesses in Jerusalem that are proclaiming God to it. For most people think it's going to be Moses and Elijah. There's some discussion about that, but
the Moses and Elijah?
Elijah, yes.
They're coming back.
Because they came back long ago on the Mount of Transfiguration. Moses and Elijah were there too.
I don't know anything about that, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to clarify.
It's in John. It's the book of John, Gospel of John.
And could you just give me a little summary? Because I'm not. So Moses and Elijah came back from the dead, or they came in a spiritual realm, or
Mount of Transfiguration. Jesus took John and Peter and James with him up onto the Mount of Transfiguration, and Jesus took off humanity and went back to God for moments so they could see it. Peter, of course, is the one, speaks up and said, let's make 3 tabernacles here so we can all be happy and joyous. Tabernacles for us 3 and tabernacles for you. God said, shut up, Peter, listen to Jesus. So that's a time when the 2 witnesses came back, because they're still around. The people that have died and have either just trusted in Messiah in the Old Testament, or had Messiah come and they believed, they're all still around. And
what do you mean?
If God decides to make them come back and allows them to come back for a little while, that's what they'll do.
Oh, you mean they're still around spiritually? They're in
Spiritually.
heaven.
Right. Now, the thing is, these guys knew who they were. Now, how they knew that, I don't know. But they knew instantly exactly who those guys were, because there was no introduction done.
Well,
Jesus was just there, and they showed up, and Peter knew who they were.
Maybe they were name tags in heaven. That would make a lot of sense, actually.
They had a thing around their
Yeah, that would help. That would help in heaven, I imagine. It's probably newcomers coming in all the time, confused, name tags.
Yeah. Little sticker on their shirt. Yeah.
So let's get to those 3.5 years now. Okay, so there's demons in the sky.
How you'd recognize them? Let me go through that for a minute. It would be John the Baptist, for example.
Yeah.
He'd be carrying his head around in his hand, you see? And they would know it's John the Baptist because he was the one that was beheaded.
Well, others were beheaded too. It could be another beheaded
person. Not to go through
person.
a few, but that's just a joke. But anyway,
I know. I got you.
You've heard that one before. Okay. So go ahead. Next question.
Oh no. Well, the question is to clarify. So now we're into the second 3.5. God says, okay, you had your 3.5 years. You failed to come to Christ, and the whole thing making zero sense to me whatsoever at this point. It seems crazy that you would have to come to Christ. Couldn't you just go straight to God? But okay, so you come to Christ, but there's now demons that have been released by God. The demons that are in the sky, are they the ones that the army that was released by God now? Who's in the sky? Who are these demons in the sky?
They're the fallen angels, and they've always been there. You can look in the New Testament of the demons being cast out. There was one of them that was cast out and put into pigs.
Yeah.
There's demons around, and they've been restrained to a certain extent, but God's not going to restrain them anymore.
Right.
There's going to be some events that are in the sky that are going to scare the crap out of you. They would scare the crap out of me. I'm not going to be here. I hope you're not either. But they're going to be something that is so bad that you don't even want to go outside. It's going to be a horrible time on earth for 3.5 years. And
makes hail look like nothing. Hail looks like child's play compared to demons in this falling from the sky.
I'm not so sure about the hell part, but it's going to be bad. Let's put it that way. It's going to be bad. And the reason why all this is going on, again, is God's trying to draw people to himself. Now, you might say, why would he do that in terrible times? Unfortunately, that's where most people come to Christ. That's where I came to Christ. Was it a particularly bad point in my life? I decided that maybe this guy really does exist. I'm going to find out.
Right.
And that's what led me to it. I was going along just fine. I wasn't making a lot of money, but I was having plenty of fun, drinking and all the rest. And it finally came to a point where I decided, after some really bad stuff happened in my life, that I need to figure out whether God's there or not. And that's when you start thinking, when you start deciding that, well, just like my daughter's life ended, mine's going to end too. And what's going to happen after that? Is this thing about, heaven, is that really true?
I hear you.
And it usually happens when bad stuff comes around. My point is, when this second 3.5 years are going on, people are going to be beyond what they can control. And once you come to the point beyond what you can control, sometimes that turns you over to God. And that's what God's plan is for the second half of the tribulation. It's going to be the worst time on earth. And that's what he says. Nothing's ever been like this bad before.
Wow. And just to be clear, it's starting to get a little Lord of the Ringsy on me, to be honest with you. But that said,
that's one of my favorite books, Michael. I'm glad you liked that one.
Oh yeah. No, they're great. I mean, I'll be honest. I think I read The Hobbit 30 years ago, but I have seen the trilogy
okay. Right.
And beyond, the other films as well.
They did a pretty good job. They did a pretty good job.
They did a good job. And there's a lot of demons and orcs and whatnot. And this it's ringing the Lord of the Rings bell. But that said, just one last question about those tribulations, because you've definitely painted a picture. I'll be honest with you. I don't want demons in the sky. I think I'd be pretty scared at that point.
It is very scary.
So will us non-believers who somehow made it through the rapture and still didn't come to Christ, now there's demons in the sky. Let's say, okay, now, all right, that's it. Now we got demons in the sky. Okay, forget it. I have to come to Christ. Is that opportunity still open for me, or is it closed at this point?
God will always accept.
So
God always, if you come to him, he will never turn his back on you.
Right.
Ever.
So it seems to me at this point the entire world is saved. Can you imagine anyone that isn't persuaded by Jesus in the sky, followed by demons in the sky?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said last time we interviewed, I don't understand why they're now. Plenty of evidence.
Right.
Nothing like that, I'll grant you that, but there's still evidence.
Yeah, nothing that
Not
comes
like that.
close to. So it sounds to me like we're all going to heaven if the rapture is accurate.
Unfortunately, that's not the case. There's people that, I go back to the first century. That's when people talk about that, going back to the first century. There was people that studied that Bible and knew it by heart, knew exactly what it said. And Jesus came and did everything that they were talking about Messiah doing. He did every single one of them.
It's written that he did.
They still didn't believe, going by just what the Bible says, and the fact that the people did or didn't believe, that the people that were in charge and many of the others didn't believe.
Right.
And they still don't. And some of the most difficult people I witnessed to are Jews. I love them. I love the Jewish people because I think they're great. And they brought oracles that I got to read about that made me realize how important it is. But they're some of the most difficult people to get across to because they're angry. And they have a reason. Christians didn't treat them very well for a very long time. But the best friends they have on earth now are the evangelical Christians. It's the best friends they got.
Well, that gets into a totally different thing altogether, which, they don't seem like good friends to me, that we want to support Israel and love Israel. And
politics.
At the end of the day, though, we're going to rebuild this temple in order to convert you all to our religion. Seems like a little disingenuous. Like maybe Jews are mad because they're like, hey, why are you so convinced that you're right? It seems a little condescending the way Christians talk about.
There's lots of reasons why people don't want to listen, don't want to believe. There's lots of reasons. And I'll grant you some of those are probably true.
Okay, so
get obnoxious sometimes.
I have a couple more points, and I want to get into them, and this is what I want to talk about, and we're going to do this in the second half of the show, which is going to be on Patreon. And if you want to hear what Kelly has to say about these things, you're going to have to join us on our Patreon. But first, I'm going to ask these. I'm going to lay it out for you so you know what's in the Patreon section. Number one, you're talking about the devil, and it opens a Pandora's box of, wait, so there's two gods? There's another powerful God? The all-powerful God doesn't have power over this other God? And et cetera, et cetera. And then I want to ask about all the other end times predictions that people were so gosh darn sure about that didn't come true. So if you want to hear what Kelly has to say about that, you're going to have to come over to our Patreon, because there's all the extra content over there, not just the extra long shows, but there's special content just for patrons. And of course, there is the message board where you get to jump in and be a part of this conversation. And you can do that at dogmadebate.com, dogmadebate.com. Come join our Patreon.